Hello, and welcome back to Scoutcast, brought to you by Fantasy Football Scout. As always, you are joined by me, Andy, FPL Mode, and we are also joined again. He is back. The legend has returned. Seb, how's it going?
I'm all right, thank you, mate. I'm not deserving of that title, but nice nonetheless. I'm very good, thank you, my friend. How are you?
You're the only one with a green arrow. You must be a legend.
Yeah, but agree now. It's just inside 200k. So yeah, that's high standards. High standards.
Yeah, exactly. Well, or low standards from me. It's one of the two. Yeah. And we're also joined again by Rich. How is it going, Flapjack?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. I mean, one of the reasons Sebs has got a green is because he didn't have to do a hit for Darwin or Salah. That probably helped.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas other people did hits for Darwin, and then Darwin didn't play.
I think I'm lower than where, when you do like live BFPL just after everything updates.
Yeah.
I think I am lower than where I was when that first happened. So everyone's hits and all that pushed me higher than me actually playing the game. So
you played the long game and you won.
Yeah.
Did I? I mean, like the Darwin thing, just not meant to be, is it? Like, hold him all this time. First, I think I remember what's happened. You, I was at first, I was a bit annoyed that like, oh, now everyone's getting Darwin, and I don't get my differential. Turns out none of us do. So
can I just say for that as well? Like, I went early on Darwin. I went on a Wednesday, I think it was, because I was like, I don't think Mitrovic is playing. I just don't think he's playing. And I was pretty sure from the comments coming out, I was like, right, do you know what? I'm going to do it. Mitrovic to Darwin, done. Obviously, team sheets came out. Fulham were the first game. Lovely. Mitrovic out. Brilliant. This is what I want. What happens? Darwin then doesn't play as well. So literally, if I'd have kept him, I'd have had 0 points. If I didn't, I'd have had 0 points. Obviously, Darwin might play in the second game. He might not yet, though. Like, he might not even play in the second game.
The comments don't look good. Have you seen like he's not trained apparently? Insider stuff. So who knows? But it doesn't sound great.
It's
all right, mate. We'll get someone off the bench.
But it's the way that
even Greenwood didn't come off the bench this week.
I know, I saw that. And also, it's the way permutations happen as well. So I was going to get Trent. I said at the beginning of the week, I kind of fancy Trent, and was going to get Trent, and then Mitrovic, who I've been holding all this bloody time for the blank, ends up probably not playing in the blank. So I was like, do you know what then? Fine. I'm going to do Mitrovic to Darwin because that makes a lot of sense. And it's just how it happens, isn't it? Mitrovic being such a horrible own that he's then influencing me getting Darwin. You know what? Give up. I give up with it. It's awful at the moment. Can't do it. Right. Anyway, cheers for coming into Scoutcast this week. We'll see you again next week. Yeah, it's how it happens though, isn't it? We're going to talk about our teams in a minute. We're also going to talk about a few other things tonight as well. We're going to have a little bit of a discussion before we look at the blanks. We're going to talk about whether doubles are worth it, because it's been a bit of an interesting time recently, and people are having a tough time with things at the moment. So we're just going to have a bit of a talk about double game weeks. We're then going to look at blank game week 28. We're going to look at blank game week 32. We're going to look at fixtures looking forward, especially with those big double game weeks we've got coming up. And then, because I've been on a school trip today and I've had my boys' parents' evening this evening, so I've been little help. Unfortunately, but Seb and Rich have both worked hard to come up with a free hit team for game week 28 and for game week 29, just to compare them and to have a look at them and think, is this a week where I want to be free hitting or is it not? So we can maybe help our decisions moving forward. And then we're going to look at our bus teams, the community team, which is also dead to me, as well as FPL. And then we're going to have some questions as well. So, shall we have a look at some points so far? Here's my team. 33 points so far with a -4. Kepper in goal got me 1 point. Ben White got me 7. Absolute hero of the game week so far, Ben White, but he isn't Gabriel with 9 points. Akanji actually played, got booked and didn't get a clean sheet, so he only got me 1 point anyway. Patterson getting me 0 points. I wasn't expecting anything anyway. Tarkovsky, 1 point. Andres Pereira, 1 point. Odegaard with 3, Saka with 3, lovely, like that. Martinelli getting a goal, let's not talk about that. Salah captain, 6 points. Darwin, 0 points. Haaland, 10 points. Who was over 100% EO, so actually hurt me. Not the best of weeks so far. Yeah, I think the less said about this, the better, to be perfectly honest. Quite a healthy red arrow down to 178k. I finally got into the top 100k after Rashford triple captain, and I've gone down about 80k since then. So, yeah, Lovely stuff. Let's move on to Rich's points. Rich, talk us through your points because I don't want to look at mine anymore.
Yeah, I mean, mine's not much better. Well, it's slightly better, but not much. I got 43 points, but minus 12. I ended up. I think I was quite set last week when we spoke. I was going to do a -8. I was going to get Robertson, Trent, and Salah, and I was going to be happy with that. And then, I think you've already touched on it with Mitrovic. He caused this cascading effect.
Yeah.
Where I ended up doing a -12 to get him out, so I could get to Darwin instead of Robertson, which has already cost me 5 points. And I ended up removing Edison for Pickford to fund it as well.
Right.
I was quite excited about the week because I've gone in with 9 doublers, Mahrez and Haaland. We talked about Greenwood. I thought I'd at least get that point off the bench.
Yeah.
Little did I know Saturday afternoon I put alerts on SofaScore on not Mason Greenwood, on Sam Greenwood for when he gets subbed on. And he didn't get subbed on. So I needed to turn that alert off actually. It was that boring that I was hoping for that. I sold Rashford and Trippier. It was between selling Rashford or Mahrez, and I ended up selling Rashford and losing the value I built up. And to be honest, with City 4-0 up at half time, I'm kind of glad I still did it because, at least Man City absolutely dominated. Just didn't have Mahrez on the pitch.
Yeah.
It's given me more players for game week 28 is a silver lining. And I do think the hit's going to pay off. I'm 3 points down on it.
Yeah.
But then obviously I've still got 9 players to play.
Yeah.
Because I was taking out a lot of junk. Like I had to get rid of Azpilicueta, concussion protocol. Mitrovic didn't play. Edison, I was quite nervous about removing Edison, but that's worked out all right. And then Trippier and Rashford didn't play.
Yeah.
We'll obviously get to this, but I think losing like Rashford is interesting for later when Man United, in 29 and stuff. We'll get there later, but with the fixtures.
Well, I was looking at future chip strategies when I did it. I ended up keeping Shaw as well.
Okay, fair.
Which I didn't think I'd do.
I mean, I think that was bottom of the list of considerations for anyone, like because they're so nebulous, and also there were, sometimes there was only certain players you could sell to get to other players. I don't think anyone was like trying to particularly save any players, but the outcome of that might dictate what you do later, I think.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, it's interesting because they got Liverpool next, then they got the blank, haven't they? But they've also got a double, quite a nice double. So it's tricky, but I've got Shaw. So some people won't have Shaw.
No, I don't know. No.
That's what I mean. So you can't have them all. I mean, maybe in hindsight, people wish they just stuck, not done anything. But we still got. I mean, this was pigeonholed as being a really bad blank game week.
Yeah.
And it has been a bad blank game week, but we still got the double part to go. So I'm still got my fingers crossed.
Oh, here we go. Talking about fingers crossed. Seb is on a green arrow. Talk us through your green arrow, Seb.
Sure, I'll run through the team real quick and then anything interesting, probably not. Pickford in goal with 2, Trent with 6, Gabriel with 9, Bueno with 2, Salah captain 6, Saka 3, Odegaard 3, Andreas with 1, Darwin 0, obviously, Haaland 10, and Gnonto 1. Bench is Kepa, Rashford, Shaw, Trippier. So I guess the interesting things from this, because most, the left-hand side, as you look at it, of that team is basically what everyone has, right?
Yeah.
So my differentials, if you like, not that was the purposeful choice of them, is maybe Pickford, but Bueno, Andreas, I guess Pickford versus Tarkowski, so not really. Andreas and Gnonto. Not only did any of them do nothing, but they kind of delivered the minimum as well, right? 1 points all around. Bueno's got another to come, so we'll see. The other thing, maybe this is a little better though, is that I do have Kepa still. A lot of people still have him, I guess. I've lost Edison now to Pickford, so Kepa will be my first choice-ish, although we'll see about chips. But Rashford, Shaw, and Trippier remain in my team. So I'm not sure how much I'll use them over the next few weeks, but if I want to, I still have them, and I have the value there. So there's a nice little option. And I didn't take any hits to put this team together. It was 2 free transfers, so that's nice. That's basically the reason I've got a green arrow, right? The team isn't too special. And then Foden finally hauled. I don't have him anymore, of course. Why would I? But he finally hauled.
Yeah.
He played from the right, and he I mean, it's Bournemouth, isn't it? But he looked very good. So that's why I got him a long time ago. I just forgot about the whole him actually needing to be on the pitch thing. So
whenever Foden does anything now, I think of you, Seb. You don't even own him anymore, and I just think you held him all that time, and I just always think of you now. I know. Before we move on to looking at blank game week 28, which is what we're going to look at first. I just wanted to have a really quick discussion. It only has to be a couple of minutes, and Seb, I'll start with you. what a lot of people are very, very frustrated at the moment because they are going in quite hard on these doubles. They're being aggressive, which in a week like this week where you had players that were blanking and blanking in the future as well, you had players that were doubling, it feels like the logical thing to do is to take hits and attack these double game weeks, knowing that you should be able to get points. But people aren't seeing a rise in the ranks, they're not getting the points out of it and things like that. Is that just variance biting you? Which I know I usually ban you from saying variance, but I'll let you, that's fine. Or is it that we're being a little bit blinded by these double game weeks and we shouldn't be?
I mean, I guess there's a short and a long answer here. The short answer is more fixtures, good, get more fixtures. And then the long answer is obviously get more fixtures, but not to the point that you do anything silly. But then we kind of just return to our usual decision making with FPL anyway, and it would be like, I don't know, say who's the Salah, Rashford, Haaland, somewhere in between those three in terms of, you know, the best FPL pick this season. If they had Bournemouth at home, sure, you wouldn't bin them off. You might even captain them. But is one match versus Bournemouth at home better than, who did people make hits for? Darwin, who had Wolves and thank you, Palace and Wolves. So not as good as, and let's assume Darwin, you know, didn't have the problem, but not as good as Rashford's one fixture, say, or Haaland's one fixture, but double the chance. So, you know, if Rashford had that Bournemouth fixture twice, you wouldn't think twice about it. So it's just a slightly poorer fixture, but two of them. I think we can get caught up on this. Oh, it didn't work out, but it's not about whether it worked out or not. It's what gives you the best chance of points. Yeah. And fixtures are basically the best chance of points anywhere in this game. If you're taking -12s, -16s all over the place just to get a small gain, so like maybe an extra defender or something, maybe not so much, especially if you're losing someone who's playing. But in most scenarios, the time hits should be taken are doubles and blanks. And if anything, I think people go too lightly on it, as long as they're being smart about it.
Yeah. It's interesting because obviously, Rich, you went full hog. You went -12. You got a team with 9 doublers in it. Obviously, it hasn't worked out quite yet, but you've got all the second fixtures to come, haven't you? How are you feeling about it?
I thought this week was a bit of a very rare week where I think it was very, very easy to do big hits because you had all these blank game weeks and then you had a load of doubles. So, I mean, they were basically, I know we talked about it last week, but they were basically free. I know a lot of people don't like the, it's only a -2. In this case, it was only a 0 because you can point out stuff like what happened to Darwin happened. But I mean, I've almost repaid my hit, 12-point hit. I've had an awful week. Yeah. But I'm only 3 points down on that hit just because there was, a blank and a double. Obviously, that's really, really rare. Yeah. So yeah, and I never really do hits, as in, or I haven't in recent seasons. I mean, I can't remember the last hit I did. Yeah. I've been rolling most of the time. This seemed like such a good opportunity to do it, and especially because game week 28, for example, I don't know what I'm doing in 28, but I didn't even have a keeper, a guaranteed keeper. So doing a hit for Pickford, I got an extra fixture and I got a definite keeper for 28. So I think this week was quite unique, but yeah, I'll always attack doubles. Yeah. I mean, I looked at the team of the week for this week and there's no one like obvious that we should have been targeting that had a single game week. Yeah. It was like Declan Rice, McGinn, Ings, Benrahma. Possibly you can make an argument for Ings, but were people really going to go for Ings? I don't think so. Not with his injury record.
No, and exactly. To add to that as well, I think like some people maybe think, oh, doubles, this double in particular hasn't worked out because now my strategy for the future is poorer or harder. I think those are two separate things. If we're asking, are doubles worth it? The answer in isolation is yes. If you've made your long-term team worse by trying to attack these doubles, I don't think that's the fault of the doubles. I think that's the fact that it's been hard to plan right, but that's because maybe you focused on the immediacy as opposed to the medium, the longer term. But if the immediacy is a double, doubles are good.
Well, see, this is what other people have been doing, though. So, for instance, like there were a lot of people that ignored Darwin this week and went for Ollie Watkins because he plays in the blank coming up as well, and he obviously has fixtures and he's been playing well. Only had one fixture this week, but obviously it's a tough comparison because Darwin didn't actually play in the end. But if you went for another doubler or whatever, but is there a happy medium in terms of bringing in a few players that have a double game week and bringing in a player that is going to give you that long-term view? Don't get me wrong, I'm asking these questions more as devil's advocate than anything else, because for me, I completely agree with what Rich said earlier. I will always attack every double game week as well, because they're, like Seb has already said, they're going to get you more points more often than not, aren't they? And you can't look at one double game week and say that didn't work, and then go into the next double game week and say, well, because that one didn't work, I'm not going to go heavy on this one, because they're all got to be taken in isolation as well, haven't they? But there are those people that are out there this week with Ollie Watkins and Tyrone Mings, and they brought him in. I thought about it. I'm in a chat with Rich, and I was thinking about taking Patterson out for Tyrone Mings. But in the end, I was like, well, that's for a hit in a single game week. The chances of him, actually coming up well, that's what I'm trying to get at now. So, Rich, is there a happy medium to be made, or do you just go with those double game weekers because that's what makes sense in the immediacy?
I mean, the Watkins and Mings example's pretty unique, as in that was because people are planning for the blanks and doubles. So in a way, they're still transfers that were planning because Villa playing the blank. A lot of people got Mings weeks ago. I know Praz did, because Villa were going to play in the blanks. So yeah, you could go for a player who's going to play in every game week, or you could go for a doubler, or a combination of the both. But it's I hate saying it, but it is team dependent. It's like the goalkeeper example I gave. If someone's got Kepa already, they're pretty well set up with their goalkeepers for the blanks and doubles. But if someone doesn't have, if you were like me with Edison and Leno doing a hit, you've almost got a double incentive to do it.
Yeah.
And I realise I'm using the goalkeepers as an example again.
You love the goalkeepers.
Yeah, I do love a goalkeeper. So yeah, there is a happy medium probably, but yeah, I mean I do personally attack them as hard as I can, and I won't be able to stop myself.
Yeah.
Like with the World Cup wild card, I got all my Fulham and Chelsea in. It got to that game week, I already had 6 Fulham and Chelsea.
Yeah.
It didn't work out that well, but apart from Leno, but I'll do it again every single time.
Yeah, exactly. Right, lovely stuff. It's just interesting having those conversations, I think, as well, because there are people out there that will be seeing people in a mini league and they'll be like, I went with Darwin, they went with Watkins, they got one fixture and they're loving life, and I've now got Darwin, who I'm probably thinking about taking out again. They thought the long term, is that the way to think about it? And it's tough, isn't it? Seb, just weigh in on that bit then, because there are people out there that are going to be...
just weigh in.
No, it's interesting though, isn't it? Like,
No,
I think there are going to be people out there.
I wonder if
hurting, yeah.
is that a good comparison though? Because even like Darwin got 0, he might stay on 0, and it's very hard to like look back on our decision.
Yeah.
Like on balance there, when we know we got 0, we know Watkins scored, but beforehand, show me the people that were saying Watkins was going to outscore Darwin. If anyone made that decision, they were taking probably fewer points now for more points later.
Yeah.
So they weren't even like choosing whether to attack or double or not. They were choosing the period, and they were attacking a future double and blank because they thought they would come out net up over the long term. But even then, in that sort of isolation, if people were taking a hit for Watkins this week, as opposed to say getting him later, then he scored 6. I don't think he got bonus, did he? So you're down
6, yeah.
Yeah, so you're down on that. I know it was probably part of other moves, but if the choice was like, a hit for a striker, Darwin or Watkins, well, the Watkins one, I know Darwin got 0, but let's assume he at least played both games. You probably came out down on that. So you actually needed more from Watkins for it to work out this week in terms of when you were weighing the decision before we knew what happened. And yes, you were betting on the long term, but could you have got Watkins later? Therefore, was the hit for him this week? And I know the answer is like, no, I took the hit because I wanted Trent or I wanted other players.
Yeah.
But that's why I think Darwin Watkins is kind of a misleading example with this period in mind.
Yeah.
And what's the alternative? As in, because there were players, and I know it's specific to this week, but you just deliberately sit with Mitrovic, even though you don't think he's going to play because doubles are a trap. Like, that's not attacking the game week. That's going in deliberately having a 0 in your team, or as close to a 0.
Yeah.
I understand like keeping Rashford, Trippier, I do, but I mean, for example, if you had triple Newcastle defence or you're Pope in goal, I don't understand not going for a doubler. Like in a situation like that, I don't think there really is an alternative.
No, it's interesting, isn't it? And like Seb said, unless you genuinely believe that person with a single game week was going to outscore the person with a double game week, I suppose you're just saying, like Seb has already said, I'm thinking more about points in the future as opposed to points now, which is tough as well, isn't it? I guess, I don't know. It's interesting. If anybody, in the chat or on Twitter or whatever wants to weigh in on this as well, I think it is quite interesting.
And there's one more point on this. I didn't think I felt so strongly about it, but I think back to last season, how there were so many doubles, and I was quite passive with doubles last season compared to this season. I missed out on like Richarlison, for example. He absolutely hauled, didn't he, towards the end of the season? And I decided I didn't want to do a -4 to get him in.
Yeah.
There was no mention then that doubles, that was, I don't know, that was a trap. Like it wasn't a trap. I should have done it.
Yeah.
And there were multiple examples like that. There was like Bowen, Antonio. They absolutely hauled in a double. So that's why you do it.
And I think like people who sort of take a like analytical approach to FPL, by which I mean, the sort of analytics FC, typically characterized as maybe a bit more conservative with things like hits, often led by the things like the models, whether that's the public ones or private models, because models tend to be a bit more conservative with those sort of things. During this period, like doubles and stuff, I mean, Andy, was the model recommending you to take a -8 or something? I think when we looked at it, like if the methods that normally recommend being patient and conservative with FPL are recommending quite large hits during this period, I'm not saying that's right, but I think it shows how our mindset should shift, or at least should be, during this period. And I mean, I think in the chat, Abuka's probably summed this up lovely, saying the Watkins Darwin decision that they had to make as well, they think it was the right one, but it doesn't stop them feeling bad about it. And I think that's just FPL, isn't it? Separating that I made a good decision and I got varianced. How do I make a good decision next time without leaning on that outcome?
And also, you can just get unlucky as well. Like we were talking about this last week, me and Rich, in terms of our teams look dreadful. But we was actually, a lot of our moves we'd made coming up to that were thinking about the blank as well. So, I got Akanji in, I got Patterson in Gameweek 17, I had Mitrovic in, all these players all of a sudden not playing. KDB I had, who I did move to Salah, obviously, but he was not playing. You had Mahrez. All these players that we get in thinking, wow, they're playing the blank. And then you get to the blank and you're missing 3 or 4 players when you only have 11 anyway. So it's it can just be an unlucky thing in terms of injury, rotation, all that kind of stuff. So, it's been an interesting time in FPL.
And imagine you just sat there with KDB instead of switching him to Salah.
Yeah.
That'd be like gross negligence. That would be.
But people could have done that. Like there was a lot of people out there that really thought Mahrez was going to play. They really thought Mahrez was going to play against Bournemouth. And winning 4-1, you think, well, he's going to get a couple of returns, isn't he? And they didn't move him to say, I don't know, a Gakpo or whoever it is. Obviously Gakpo is a tough one because he didn't do anything either. But it's it's an interesting time at the moment. And I think, like Rich has said earlier, is that, if this first bit of the double game week had gone really well, we wouldn't be having this discussion. It would be like, double game week. You got the double game week players in, they did really well. It's just because obviously they've struggled at the start of this double game week.
Yeah, if Trent was sat there with 15 points and Salah's got the assist, we wouldn't even have this topic, would we? They'd be all like, happened. Oh, look how smart we all are.
That almost happened, didn't it? But someone got in the way, I think.
Apparently, yeah.
Poor old Hendo. Right, let's have a look at blank game week 28. So, Seb, you've set us up a little bit of a thing here talking about the permutations of game week 28 and whether fixtures will happen in game week 28 and what we're kind of relying on here. Just talk us through the table a little bit because I think people are tired of hearing my voice for a second.
They're not tired of mine. So this is just to say, this is from the Scout website. I think Neil put this together, so I have just straight lifted this because it's a lovely way of putting it. It is a bit of reading, so I will read it out for people listening, not watching. I hope that's okay, but it is also on screen if you want to go find the YouTube video for this. This is blank game week 28. List of the fixtures, whether they're on or a possible blank, and what would make them a blank. So Arsenal Palace is on, we're all good. Villa Bournemouth is on. Brentford versus Leicester is a possible blank if Leicester beat Blackburn in the FA Cup 5th round, which is coming up this week. A lot of what we're going to say is going to depend on what happens. We're recording Monday evening. There's midweek fixtures for the FA Cup and then a draw as well, which will affect the future. Back to the table, we have Brighton versus Man United, which is a possible blank if Brighton beat Stoke in the FA Cup 5th round and or if Man United beat West Ham in the FA Cup 5th round. Chelsea versus Everton is on. Liverpool versus Fulham is a possible blank if Fulham beat Leeds in the FA Cup. And this is the big one because Liverpool players are a thing we all own. Man City versus West Ham is a possible blank if Man City beat Bristol City in the FA Cup 5th round and or West Ham beat Man United, so the corresponding result from earlier on about Brighton Man United fixture. Nottingham Forest versus Newcastle is on. Southampton versus Spurs is a possible blank if Southampton beat Grimsby, so probably in the FA Cup 5th round. And/or I know it's going to go badly, isn't it? And then
Yeah.
that's fair enough. And/or Spurs beat Sheffield United in the FA Cup 5th round. And then finally, Wolves versus Leeds is a possible blank if Leeds beat Fulham in the FA Cup round. So again, that is the reverse of earlier. And if I get this correct, that's the result we want so that all our Liverpool players play. And that is blank game week 28. So we are looking ahead to 26 right now. So it's a couple of weeks' time, but it's worth planning for because it's going to dictate our strategies, I think.
It is indeed. And Rich, I don't know whether you're the same as me, and I don't know whether I'm even in the right saying this, but I feel like I am. If that Liverpool-Fulham game doesn't play... sorry. If that Liverpool-Fulham game isn't in that game week, in that blank game week, I'm almost certain I'm going to be free hitting that week.
Yeah, that's the week I'm leaning towards at the moment. Obviously, all of these fixtures could completely change that.
Yeah.
And again, it's why I was quite aggressive, getting people like Pickford in so that I have the option to not free hit if that game goes ahead.
Yeah.
So I guess it's worth saying there's a couple of games that are more likely here, aren't there? Because Brentford, Leicester, all that takes is one result to go their way.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get one of Liverpool, Fulham, or Wolves, Leeds as well. The other ones seem a lot less likely, don't they? Because they've got more things need to happen for the fixture to go ahead. So it's pretty straightforward. It's going to be quite exciting for the FA Cup. And I think I'm right. These are going to be settled on the day as well.
Yeah, yeah.
We will know this week.
Yeah. And
that layout for Game Week 28. So that's going to be quite fun.
Would you say then that after these FA Cup games happen, you can sit down, pen and paper, and you can plan your whole chip strategy from then? So, for instance, Thursday night, Friday night, you can sit down and plan it all.
Or spreadsheet, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm old school, mate.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, we should be able to.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we can have a rough idea even now, though, because there's things that are way more likely than others.
Yeah.
So you can come out with a plan. If it's Liverpool, Fulham, or Wolves, Leeds. The only other one that seems likely is that Brentford, Leicester one, which I guess would make Tony. I mean, you've got Tony already, but that will make it really easy just to have someone like Tony. And just hold him through, because when it be double player fixture against Leicester, then double.
Yeah, be lovely,
obviously with a potential 2-game ban if he gets a couple of yellow cards.
Yeah.
But so him, Raya, again, talk about goalkeepers. Raya would be quite an obvious player to bring in as well.
Yeah.
For that little run. So yeah, I think it's going to be fun. It's just we can't know enough right now.
You were doing so well. You lasted 4 minutes before you mentioned another goalkeeper.
I can't stop myself.
Yeah.
That's because I've got 2 points with a game to go with Pickford. I'm like on cloud 9 right now.
Loving it. Yeah, exactly.
Doubled Kepa's score. Yeah. But sorry.
Seb, what are you thinking in terms of how this is affecting your transfers moving forward? Because for me, a lot of this isn't changing what I'm doing. Like in terms of, I'm looking at rolling this week. Game week 27 is bringing in Brighton players, and then after that, it's governed by do I free hit in 28 or not. So it's tough to say how much this is going to change, apart from when I definitely know what fixtures are going to be in 28.
So there is the 32, 33, 34 period as well, which will be of interest. Some of that we'll kind of know more again after this week, because we'll get the FA Cup results and then the draw for the next round, which is what mostly affects that. But obviously, their permutation is narrow because teams that have already gone through are the only ones that are then available to affect those weeks. It's just whether they get through another round and what happens there. So there's still a little bit to come, I think. But because we have to decide what happens, how we start setting ourselves up for 28, 27 and everything, before we'll know that, I think you probably start pointing down a path. And then a big part of that as well is how your team currently looks, right? We mentioned you've got Tony, which is a nice place to be. I have 0 Brighton, so whatever happens, I'll get Brighton, whether that's using a chip or whether that's a couple of transfers, maybe a hit in 27 like yourself. I think even though I kind of really don't like my team for this week, I think I'll be rolling. Maybe we go back to the conversation we had a minute ago, right? We'll all be rolling. We'll all be having subpar teams for this week. The person who goes a different route has a great team this week, builds a 20-point head start on us. And then they don't lose that head start later when we only make 15 points back on a free hit or something. I don't know. But I think I will probably go with the more common route of getting in Brighton and then using my chips.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to lock myself into anything now, especially, no one listening to this. Our goal here is to get you up to date on information and present options so that when you know what happens after midweek, maybe you can look back on this and go, okay, that's the route I'm going to go. Because right now we just don't know. So I wouldn't lock myself in, and I wouldn't recommend anyone else does either.
Yeah. And I was looking at this when I was planning last week, I think it was. I was thinking, yeah, it's not too bad. I can get through blank game week 28, I think, especially if Liverpool play. And then I can get these players in. And then, oh, look at that. Blank game week 32 rolls up. And you're just thinking, yeah, I've got through everything. And this is what we were talking about not that long ago, was saying there doesn't seem to be a really clear route this year. Like a couple of years ago, it was just perfect. You knew exactly how to get through everything. Whereas this year, it just seems that little bit trickier, which in some ways is nice. You want the challenge, because obviously if you come through the challenge really well, then you're laughing. But Seb, talk us through blank game week 28 as well, because there's some interesting permutations here, which could obviously affect things moving forward.
Sure. 32. Sorry, is that blank? 32.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, once again, this is should be up on the screen either now or momentarily.
This
is from the Scout website. Neil, I really hope it was Neil who wrote this, because I believe it was them who put this together. And thank you so much for doing so. This again is just a little table, so please do pop over to YouTube if you have chance. Otherwise, I will read through it. We have in game week 32, Arsenal versus Southampton is a possible blank if Southampton beat Grimsby. I should probably go again, shouldn't I? And then a quarterfinal opponent. So there's going to be lots of there and then. Yeah. This is what I meant. There are two stages here, but it will narrow because we'll know if Southampton, if Grimsby get through, cool, this one doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Bournemouth versus West Ham, possible blank if West Ham beat Man United and then a quarterfinal opponent. Brentford versus Aston Villa is on. So Tony Watkins looking good. You can see why people were on that. Brighton versus Man City is a possible blank if either Brighton or City beat Stoke or Bristol City and their quarterfinal opponent. Palace versus Everton is on. Fulham versus Leeds is a possible blank if Fulham beat Leeds and then a quarterfinal opponent, or if Leeds beat Fulham and then a quarterfinal opponent. So this is that, do we get to keep our Liverpool players? This is that next step on from there, because obviously Fulham are playing Leeds. It's kind of the same either way around here for whatever team gets through. Leicester versus Wolves is a possible blank if Leicester beat Blackburn and then a quarterfinal opponent. Liverpool versus Forest is on, so we do get to have some Liverpool players then. Man United versus Chelsea is a possible blank if Man United beat West Ham and then their quarterfinal opponent. And finally, Newcastle versus Tottenham is a possible blank if Tottenham beat Sheffield United and then a quarterfinal opponent.
And the thing is as well, obviously the quarterfinal opponents could be the other teams that are in this, are in the Premier League, aren't they? So
we do get the draw immediately after the results this midweek. Yeah. So again, while we won't know for sure, we will have a little more information. For example, to just dig on Grimsby a bit more, if Grimsby get through and then someone goes and draws them, maybe you can be a bit more confident that whatever corresponding blank or double would happen as a result of the Premier League team playing them probably is going to go your way. But then if Grimsby beat Southampton, maybe they won't, and I'm going to look real silly.
And these are just nice things as well to screenshot and just think, right, these are the permutations. This is what's going to happen. These are the teams that are 100% playing. And sometimes I don't know whether, Rich, you do the same as me. When I'm looking at trying to buy an enabler, if they're not going to be a double game week player, especially defenders, it's nice to sometimes bring in those players are 100% playing in a blank game week. Don't get me wrong, by game week 32, you might have wildcarded by then anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. But it's sometimes nice just to cover yourself a little bit, isn't it? Like, for instance, if you were buying a goalkeeper that's going to be a reserve coach, whatever it is, and you wanted to go a riot, he's going to be playing in that blank game week. And it's just nice to know if you got to that point, you've got a player for that week, haven't you? Yeah,
and it's why Tarkowski was a good option. If you're looking at 28, for example. So yeah, it definitely is, and like we mentioned again with Mings, some people bought Mings in ages ago, so they did plan, for this game week, so they deserve the haul they got this week for forward planning.
Yeah,
and I agree. I think the enablers are probably the best spots, to be doing that.
Yeah, no, I like it. And Seb, how are you kind of going to use this information? It's quite far forward, isn't it? And we need to get through to 28 first, but it's worth having this in the back of your head, especially when you're planning your chip strategy, knowing that game week 32 is a game week you're going to have to get through as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think obviously any blank comes with corresponding doubles. And there's the odd conversation over, do you want to use a free hit in a blank or in a double? Typically, you'll get more out of it in a double, but maybe you want to be using a bench boost or a triple captain if you've still got it in a double, which you want a wildcard ahead of. So we often, I think over this period, we might end up using a free hit in a blank rather than a double because we want to use other chips in those doubles. But I think for me, it's a case of, even if I don't entirely set the weeks, it's maybe knowing which way round I want to use that free hit, because that feels like the first one we'd be using here. I know some people might wildcard. I don't know if I see a route where that makes sense, but I wouldn't rule it out based on teams, isn't it? Yeah. But I think the free hit is the one that you're going to use first, and that decides where you go elsewhere. We have more time to plan with transfers for this sort of 32, 34, 37 double and blank period. But more time isn't necessarily brilliant because you'll be using your transfers for other stuff. You'll be using your chips for other stuff. So I'm probably more tempted to use chips in that second period than average. But maybe that's just because I think I can get through this with transfers and then try and set myself up for a big finish. But I think either are equally likely. And I think with more transfers and more time, people are more likely to go early.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's going to be a really challenging, I'm going to say, couple of weeks that we're obviously going to be going through. But everything will be a lot clearer after Wednesday and Thursday, knowing what the FA Cup fixtures, the results we get out of those as well, because it's going to inform us a lot more. And like Rich was saying earlier, it is one of those moments then where you can sit down and go a little bit more, this is roughly what I'm going to do moving forward. And it is nice to have that plan. It's nice to know, this is when I'm going to do things, because it just makes your transfers feel a bit more solidified, doesn't it? As opposed to at the moment, get some doublers in quickly to -12. Like, it'd be quite nice to just go, no, do you know what? I'm going to do that because I'm going to need him in 6 weeks' time, and it will feel a bit better, won't it?
I think the important thing, if you don't mind me just jumping in again, is to say, reminds me of last season when we had the wildcard versus triple captain Salah thing. Yeah. My opinion then was triple captain Salah at that moment in time was the best triple captain we've ever had. And I went wildcard because the triple captain was brilliant, but the overall wildcard strategy worked better for me. And I had an okay season last year, so I think it worked out for me, at least personally. This time around, I'm not saying it's quite the same differentiator here, but the point is, I think whatever decision you make, you need to know what the consequences are of that, and therefore what you need to be doing to plan ahead. So if you're free hitting, if you're wildcarding, whatever it is now, you need to know that this 32 and onward period is coming, and you need to start prepping for that, and vice versa, of course.
Yeah, lovely. Right, let's move on to some fixtures we've got from Lego Mane here. So these are outline the Gameweek 29, Gameweek 34 and Gameweek 37. So the big double game weeks. And when we say big double game weeks, these are big double game weeks that we've got in Gameweek 29, Gameweek 34 and Gameweek 37. Now, Gameweek 29 is obviously the one that's closest, and it is straight away after the blank game week. So that is where a lot of people are thinking, do we free hit in, Game Week 28, because then we just literally don't have to worry about it, and then you go straight into Game Week 29 thinking about the fact that you've got a massive double game week. Rich, I know, spoke a little bit about that last week, saying, yes, that's quite nice, but you lose a transfer. You obviously don't get a transfer to try and build towards Game Week 29, so you're probably going to take a hit in Game Week 29 to get some extra ones in there. A lot of people are talking about maybe wildcarding in 27, then free hitting in 28, and then bench boosting in 29, because that's a viable strategy.
Some people looking at wildcard this week as well.
Are they? Ooh.
Yeah, that's gaining momentum.
So there's a lot of chat about this because you've got that blank game week before it. That's the big thing with this one, isn't it? But then in 34 and 37, obviously, we're going to have a lot longer to build towards 34 and 37, and we're going to know them a little bit earlier, I think. It's not going to be too bad, is it, in terms of time that we've got to know when they're going to happen. And also, by Game Week 34 and 37, there's not a lot of dates that you can actually fit fixtures in, so we know they're going to be happening. So is this the best time to be using our chips? That's the big question here as well, isn't it? Are we going to be able to build towards 34 and 37? Because wildcarding in 33 seems very late, whereas people could be wildcarding 27 and building towards 29 and knowing 28's there as well. Rich, just gut feel at the moment for you, which way are you going?
So I'm leaning towards, quite strongly actually, towards free hit 28. Now, obviously things could change, and free hitting in that blank. Yeah. I think the main reason for this is Game Week 29 looks very easy. I mean, easy to navigate is an understatement. It's, that most teams are doubling. Even the team, Man City have got a bad fixture, inverted commas, against Liverpool.
Yeah.
You're still going to be playing or happy to play players like Haaland. I don't really fancy the bench boost there because you've got to come out of the blank into the double. So I'd rather bench boost, in 34 or 37.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm leaning heavily towards free hit 28 because I feel like free hit 29, are you guaranteeing to gain much more?
Yeah.
Because you're probably going to be free hitting out doublers for better doublers, but how much better are they? You can get, unlucky with things like what happened with Darwin.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd feel that confident gaining points in 29. I mean, I'm sure free hits will do better, but I wouldn't feel as confident about it.
We're gonna look at, so we've got a free hit for 28 and we've got a free hit for 29. So it's genuinely really interesting, like, because you both did them before I came on tonight. So I looked at them and I found it really interesting seeing how different it is to my team that I've got right now, if that makes sense. But before we get on to that, Seb, how are you looking at this kind of period? Is there anything inside you that thinks, actually, I'm wanting to save some of my chips for that game week 33, 34, kind of period?
I guess the thing is, this is the sort of usual, and I say usual, it's not been that case for about 4 or 5 years now, but this is the usual big double period, right? In a traditional season, we don't get snow, we don't get monarchs dying, we don't get COVID, we get FA Cup fixtures, which take away weekends from teams playing, and they end up having to do doubles. They blank in a 32 and they double in a 36 or whatever it ends up being.
Could I just hit the monarchs dying? I didn't realise what you said then. I was like, yeah, we don't usually get monarchs dying in Game May. Yeah.
It's not that common,
Maybe giggle.
But yeah, so we have that period, that traditional big double period because of the FA Cup and blanks coming up, and that is usually when we'd be saving our chips for. And the usual plan is the whole I don't know how they'd fall, but it would be like wild card in 32, free hit in 33 because that's a blank, and then bench boost in 34 or whatever it is. You wild card 2 bench boost, you dead end before that, and then you free hit the corresponding blank to when you would have wildcarded for, so that you can cover both the teams that are doubling and get the bench boost or a triple captain, maximize points there, and then not have the downside by free hitting away those players in the blank. That's normally what we would set up for, give or take. This season is a bit different because we have so many other blanks and doubles for other reasons. But this period is coming, and so the temptation is to try and, shoehorn maybe that's the mistake, right? Shoehorn my way into that strategy because it has, maybe upside is the wrong word, but it does seem to have the maximum point potential, as it usually does. But maybe it's harder to get there because of how our teams are set up now. So I think we'll be using our chips in a more reactionary sense to how we are set up, as opposed to in the past when maybe it'd be a bit more proactive with fixtures and whatnot. But that's fine. If we're forced into that, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. I think it's annoying that a lot of mine is based on that Liverpool game in Game Week 28. I feel like if that is in Game Week 28, I'm just going to roll through that. I get what Rich is saying about Game Week 29 in terms of I feel like I can get to quite a good team anyway. But I'm also looking at Game Week 29 and thinking it could be quite fun with a free hit. Like, there are some really fun teams in there that have got quite some nice fixtures. Like, Bournemouth have Fulham and Brighton at home. That's quite nice. That's quite fun. Like, if you go for someone like a Dominic Solanke or something like that. Nottingham Forest have Wolves and Leeds. That's quite nice as well. Like, if you get players... Rich is smiling already, like, is that fun? But it's like... there are some fun teams there, like... that have some nice fixtures. Brighton, obviously, if you haven't already invested in Brighton, have Brentford at home and Bournemouth away. Leicester have Palace and Villa. That looks nice. Like, Leicester, imagine getting those Leicester players in for that week. It's quite nice as well. Obviously, you have some other teams there that you're already going to be got quite a few players from anyway, like Arsenal. But also with Game Week 29, like you said, Man City don't have a nice fixture. Liverpool do not have a nice double. Like, that is probably one of the worst doubles you could get is Man City and Chelsea both away. So I can see the merits in Game Week 29 free hit. It does look like it could be a fun week to free hit on paper.
On the flip side of that, I would just throw in that, like, Man United, I know we've sold some of them. We mentioned earlier this would come up. This is I still have Shaw, I still have Rashford, which is fortunate. I didn't really plan for that. I got to make a team that allowed me to keep them. I still have Trippier. I don't have any Brighton or Brentford. But if over the next few weeks I built a Brighton and Brentford contingent, that's basically my team for this week. I'd still have a bit of Liverpool, still have Haaland, I guess. Maybe there's a Chelsea in there, and I think I'd be sorted. So while I would like I was saying, while I would like to maybe push myself to that strategy I was talking about, my team may well be better set up for not using a chip here in 29, because as Rich said, even if it's not perfect, I have a team of doublers and some decent ones.
Yeah. And what you've just said there, because I don't have like Trippier and Rashford,
Mm-hmm.
but what my plan would be is to go heavy on. I mean, I've already got Dunk, so I guess that helps a little bit. But go heavily on Brentford and Brighton, then free hit in 28, and then you come back, with your Man United and Newcastle.
Yeah.
So for people who've kept Rashford, it's even more powerful.
Yeah.
And I know what you're saying about it looks fun in 29, and to be honest, it is. And I probably would be very jealous of people free hitting, but you can always get those annoying things, can't you? Where Haaland scores a hat trick. Yeah. People keep say Leeds playing 28. People keep Nonto, and he goes heavily against Nottingham Forest. Things can happen. There's no guarantees. You could free hit and lose points.
A lot of people have talked about bench boost in Gameweek 29 because they can put Haaland on the bench and he's got Liverpool at home, and they're saying that's fine. Like that's all right. That's an okay fixture.
That's just for the flex, if nothing else, right?
I
think like in a blank, when you bench all your players that are playing and player you want to got the blank, just so you get a nice rise at the end of the week.
Yeah.
I think though, if you wildcard this week or next week, and then you go through 28 without a free hit, and you get to 29 and going to bench boost, I think that's where you take Haaland out and go for 15 doublers, because you've got the extra transfer from carrying through 28.
Imagine taking Haaland out for Brennan Johnson.
That's what free hitters will do as well.
In the free hit we'll look at in a minute, I did make one without any Haaland, but I guess it's still an option, obviously. I mean, actually, what Rich was saying, we'll come to the free hit. There were so many options that it wasn't really my preferred team. It was just a preferred team. On this graphic as well, the thing worth keeping in mind is the blue here, Lego Money, has hopefully done what the double would be if, and on the right hand side we have those dependencies again, which we went through in the last couple of slides. But for example, Man City, if they double in 34, it's going to be Fulham and one of West Ham or Brighton. 37, Chelsea, one of West Ham or Brighton. Mm-hmm. So maybe, and we'll know more again at the end of this week, but this is again the sort of do Man City line up with a very, very nice double in this period, which could be like a Fulham and a West Ham? Or is it tougher with a Chelsea and a Brighton or something? I think that's going to dictate strategy to a lesser extent, but it will dictate it again, because we could turn around at this and go, Salah's got Aston Villa and Fulham. Haaland has got Fulham and West Ham, and immediately those are two players I want. I probably want other players from those teams as well, and I want to make sure I can build a side that maximizes those points.
Yeah, lovely stuff. It is fun when you're looking at double game weeks. Like we just look at the blanks and just think it's much more fun looking at double game weeks.
It is, and actually, it's got me thinking about wildcard this week just that little bit more, because you would save your free hit till later.
Mm-hmm.
But the Haaland thing, I mean, he'd blank in 28, and then he's only got Liverpool in 29. So I think you would remove him if you're then going to bench boost 29, because your wildcard's gone. You have to get rid of your bench boost.
Also, game week 29 funds are not going to be an issue. Like, they're really not, are they? You're not going to be having a lot of Liverpool and City players, to be perfectly honest. So you can make whatever team you want out of all the other players. You really could.
It's true. It is coming out of an international break, though. That's one thing to...
Yeah, Chris has just called that in the chat. Is it 28 to 29? So that with also it being further away, the whole Darwin got injured, right? And we never would have known about it anyway. But things like that will happen. And that player you're holding, your Tony, your McAllister, whatever it is, to make this period work for you, could get injured. Or in between you playing a chip and being locked into a strategy, big injuries could occur. So there's always that uncertainty, which a bit like when I think it was me and you, Rich, we triple captain Haaland a while ago. A part of that was just the certainty that he's fit, the fixtures are happening. Yes, there is a potentially better one in the future, but I don't have as much certainty over that occurring as I do now. And that is worth something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it simplifies the chip strategy, or it's supposed to, although we're looking at this now, it's giving me a headache. So it's not simplified it that much. Although having to have a triple captain in this as well it would make it even more complex.
Dead ending.
And I guess that's a downside of bench boosting in 29, the after the international break thing.
Yeah, I think so. Dead ending into 28 is a tough option, isn't it? Like, obviously, if Liverpool and Fulham play, that's not too bad. But you're bringing in Brighton players for 27. They then wouldn't play in 28. But then wildcarding into 29, probably tough, because a lot of the players you would want to bring in for the doubles, you wouldn't want to keep long term. Seb, do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what you've just described as a free hit strategy, right?
Yeah.
If I've got a team that's good, then bad, then good again. Well, that's a free hit, not a wild card. You could. But if I'm wildcarding in players that I've just got rid of or just blanked, unless I'm missing something, that is a free hit.
Yeah. Whoa, love it. Right. Moving on to this is now my favourite bit. I'm really looking forward to this bit because I think this is it's good stuff. Good stuff from the person that's on the pod. So free hit 28 we've got here, which I can't remember which one came up with free hit 28. Was it Seb or Rich?
That was me. That was
Rich. So Rich has come up with what he thinks would be a good free hit 28 team.
I didn't say good.
Shock horror, there's a triple defence in here. That's very unlike Rich. He hates triple defences. So, Rich, talk us through this because I'm not going to lie, it's underwhelmed me, which has made me think, oh, do I really want to do this in 28? But talk us through it.
To be honest, the plan with this is mainly what you can do before and after. And then game week 28 is literally just getting a team out.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I mean, to be honest, you could be a bit safer. You could hedge it a little bit more. But yeah, I've gone for three Newcastle defenders. So Trippier, Schär, and Botman. I think Trippier and Schär are absolute locks. And then I'll probably have, it's either between Botman and Byrne. I don't think it really matters. Gabriel, obviously, home to Palace. And then Reece James was looking at Chilwell as well. And then Kepa in goal, because I don't have Kepa. Then you've got to have Saka and Odegaard. Maybe Martinelli would be a debate, but let's save that for another week now.
Yeah.
And then I put Sterling in just because I don't know. I did have Wendia instead of Sterling in the team, but I thought I'll put Sterling in. It's just a placeholder just to show what we could do. Yeah. And then Watkins and Solanke up front. But what's key here is obviously we don't know all the fixtures yet, do we? Like we don't know if Liverpool are going to be playing Fulham because this team's got Salah on the bench. Obviously, if Liverpool are playing Fulham, well, I say obviously, I'd want to go for Salah. I'd want to go for Trent. Potentially, you could even look at Mitrovic as well.
Sorry, we're just looking in the chat, and they're not liking the
team.
Sucks.
Yeah, it was more. I mean, I'm not saying this is the team I would free hit with, but it's more that we don't know all the fixtures either. So I don't think it's going to be an amazing team. I don't think you're going to get huge points in 28, but it's all about you can bring in all those Brighton and Brentford players in 27.
Yeah,
free hit, and then you've got them for the double in 29 as well.
I like how Rich did me a favour by putting this one together for me because I didn't have time to do the graphic for this one. And now you're associated with this strategy, with this terrible team. It's all you, Rich.
And
if this doesn't work out, your fault.
If there are people watching this that go, God, I hate this team, but your team will not be that far away from this team for a free hit.
The team, if you're not free hitting, your team's going to be worse than this.
Yeah, but also people might look at it and go, yeah, that's put me off. Or like Rich just said, they might look at it, predicted points 52. They might look at their points and go, actually, I've only predicted about 20 points. So if you feel like you can make up those 32 points, obviously that's a very crude way of looking at it. But, it's just, you've got to be looking at that and thinking, this is what a free hit would potentially get me. Now, for me, I'm not a massive fan of the Newcastle triple defence because Forest aren't actually that bad at home anymore. And someone like Felix isn't there. I thought he'd be a lock in a free hit for this week.
He probably would be. Yeah. He probably would be. But I put Sterling in instead.
Yeah, I like the idea of Sterling. I think Felix, would be a lock. Watkins and Solanke would be a pretty much a lock as well. But it's interesting. Seb, you obviously wanted to say something about the free hit 28 as well.
I mean, I was going to mention João Felix, so no shout. But I understand, Rich. Like, there's lots of options. This is obviously just suggestions. I think with when we're doing this, and we've got one for 29 again as well, it's not just here's the team you should free hit with and awesome. It's also an exercise in, as you kind of alluded to, how close is my team to this, or how far away is my team from this, and therefore not necessarily should I free hit to this, but how far away am I from, in theory, the optimal team for this week. And while you could do that any single week, the scout picks on the Scout website are a good example of what happens if you free hit every week, and that's a useful exercise. It's obviously more useful in a week where people actually might free hit, because in any other given game week, most people aren't free hitting, so it doesn't matter what the optimal team is. It's just nice to know because maybe it helps your transfers or it knows how well you should do yourself. But in a week where people could achieve the optimal, in inverted commas, team, it's good to know if you're close to that or a very long way away from that, and if therefore you would be closer or further away from one in another week, and what is therefore the best week to use a free hit. Because the best week to use a free hit is not the week that gets the highest score, it's the week that gets the highest score versus the team you would have had versus the team other people had.
Yeah. And also this changes massively if Liverpool and Fulham play as well, don't they? Like, you've got Salah on the bench there.
there's definitely going to be at least one more game.
Yeah.
There could potentially be two, or much more unlikely there could be 3 games as well. So I think what free hit you do go for, if you go down this route, is going to get stronger, and it's going to be more clear, which players to go for at the time. Also, I'd argue if you're not free hitting in 28, 29, I'd almost say, what's the point of going for like a double game week player like Tony, for example, if you're then deliberately going to have like 8, 9 or 10 players in the blank, because you gained a double game week, you gained a fixture, then you lose a fixture before a pretty underwhelming double for Brentford in 29.
Yeah.
So, potentially really stupid question that I should be able to answer.
Yeah.
Is there any difference? Like, is the value of losing a fixture the same, but like the equivalent negative to positive of gaining a fixture? Like, is there a world where like gaining a fixture is slightly better than losing one in terms of which one you'd better prepare for? Does that make sense?
No, it does. It does.
Like a guaranteed 0 versus.
I guess one thing I'd say is
it's probably the other way around, because gaining a fixture you can potentially get negative points. So there's a world where.
Although that's very, very rare, isn't it?
I'd say one thing. I guess that's what it comes down to, though. Like a weird bit.
And with the free hit, you get the bench as well coming in, and in a double, a player's potentially, depends on the timing, more likely to miss a fixture. Although I'd imagine you're going for more nailed assets.
I feel like I'm being stupid, and I don't know if this matters, but I feel like it's interesting. Like, are they equivalent, or is one actually like slightly better than the other if you could choose it?
No.
Well, I guess with the single, using the free hit strategy, you can get the player off the bench if that fixture is missed. So it's an extra fixture is missed. You get someone off the bench.
That's true.
Whereas in a double, if someone misses a fixture but plays the other one, you just lose a fixture.
And I guess opportunity cost as well. Oh, that's probably the wrong word, actually.
So I'd actually argue the single game week, if your extra game is going to be in a single, it's better than in a double if you've got a bench.
But I could go back to the question at the beginning of the pod as well, though, where like in a double, or at least a week where there are more fixtures rather than fewer, there's probably more options to not opt into this question and just keep your singular, but they could still do well. So I have no idea what the answer is. But
my main point was I don't like deliberately losing a fit. As in, I don't like rolling out 7 or 8 players.
Yeah. Oh, that wasn't to disagree with you. I was just wondering if there was like a mathematical solution to that. There probably is, but I'm not smart enough to do it live, clearly.
Well, if you're not smart enough, I don't think me or Andy are. Sorry, Andy. Also, for the doubler, let's just use one more example. I guess for the doubler, like say you did a hit for a double game week player in 27, and then you've not got a fixture in 2028. You've then done a hit for a double game week player to have the same number of fixtures. Is it too late at night for this conversation?
Apart from the fact that you do get one more week in between to like change that, right? So it's not just they don't happen instantaneously. There is a week in between where there is another transfer available to you to. I mean, you're not going to fix that one problem, but you do get to change your EV effectively, don't you? It's not the same for one week to the next.
Boom. Right.
So boom.
That's the free hit 28 team. Now, obviously, the big thing that we keep saying is look at this team in terms of how much of a difference is that going to make with the team you could potentially have without the free hit. Now, free hit 29, which Seb has done here, it's looking at it, and I think it's really interesting in terms of how close we're going to be to this team already, if that makes sense. So, Seb, talk us through this team that you've made that you think would be a good free hit 29 team.
So I should just give credit. This came from, we asked on Twitter earlier, just if anyone wanted covering tonight. So from Scott S. McGee, just asked about doing a free hit in 29 as an alternative strategy to see what the opportunity cost elsewhere would be. But also, of course, as we mentioned a minute ago, it doesn't necessarily you should do it, but it just looks at, as you said, Andy, how close can I get to this, or how far away would I be from it with my team, and therefore what is the likely difference in points, which is what I'm trying to make up. So I'll read it out quickly for people listening. We have Ward in goal with Sanchez, Estupinian, Trent, Shaw, Trippier, James, McAllister, Maddison, Salah, Rashford, Fernandez, and finally Danny Ings, Tony, and João Felix. Now, the immediate thing you'll notice is there's no obvious bench there. That's done on purpose, kind of to illustrate how much money you'll have this week, because I basically was like, I could make a realistic team, or I could throw as many options in there as possible, and then go, well, you're either benching 3 of these, or you're making some cheaper and getting more expensive alternatives in there. But this had about 0.5 left in the bank, and I included Salah, which I think some people might not, because even though Liverpool, based on this strategy, I think I haven't got it in front of me anymore, but I think they would double. But it was a poor one. Was it that? It was that
City and Chelsea,
was it?
Yeah, both away.
So I've got Trent. I've got Trent in there as well. I wouldn't be surprised if people went nowhere near Trent. But at that point, you've got a lot of money to spare, and you're basically just spending it on another Brighton defender or something, or West Ham defender, which is fine. But I've tried to get sort of the best spread of options here to show you what's available. There is triple Man United in Fernandes, Rashford, and Shaw. There's double Liverpool in Trent and Salah. There's triple Brighton in McAllister, Sanchez. Gone with Danny Ings. I would love, for the fixtures here for West Ham are nice, I would love some West Ham exposure. I did play with a defender, and also Fabianski was an option. Jared Bowen, probably high scores. But Danny Ings, if we still think he's going to be their starting 9 or at least get good minutes, seems a good option to me, especially if he ends up taking a penalty, because not necessarily because he's better than Bowen, but because I like this midfield of McAllister, Maddison, Rashford, Fernandes, and then Salah. Funnily enough, it'd probably be Salah I dropped for Bowen and then went with another striker. Tony's in there, of course, for you, Andy, but does have some great fixtures as well. And we have João Felix and James from Chelsea for the double there. Their double is okay from memory. Newcastle also have a decent double here alongside Leicester, and I only have Trippier from Newcastle and Maddison and Ward, who you might not even play, from those two teams, which just goes to illustrate how many options there are this week, which you could argue means it's a great week to be playing a chip, because there's upside to be accessed, and upside by which I mean, players you wouldn't have who could score big points. But I guess I just Freudian slipped into it there. You could also take hits to achieve this. So I don't know about you two. What are you thinking around this period and this team?
I mean, Rich, I love it. Straight away, you're looking at a free hit in a double game week, and it just makes you feel better than a free hit in a blank, doesn't it? Like, you just look at it and think, it just looks more fun, does it? We spoke about that earlier. But I'm looking at this team and thinking this team would be a hell of a lot easier to get to, because I'm already bringing in those Brighton players for double game week 27 anyway. And because of that, I'm going to be quite close to this team. And with, probably a hit, I could get pretty close to this team. With some of those players that actually I'm not even that fussed about, like Danny Ings, for instance. I'm not that fussed about him. But, Solanke is a bit different. But you're looking at it and think I could probably get there. The only issue is, I suppose, if you do free hit in 28, you lose a transfer for this, don't you? You're going to have to be taking more hits to get to there. So obviously you've got to take that into account. But what's your initial thoughts about this? Is that what you're thinking, or are you thinking a bit different?
So what's interesting here is, obviously I've looked at doing, from my own team, I've looked at doing free hit 28 and then obviously building through with transfers. And my plan in 29, I'd have 7 or 8 of these players. If I'd have Dunk, not a Stupinan, for example. And this is me without even having Rashford and Trippier at the moment. So, yeah, I think it's very similar, because there'll be little tweaks here. Like, I'm going to have Raya instead of Sanchez. I'll have Dunk instead of Stupinan. But let's say that's the same. I plan to have Trent. I've kept Shaw. A lot of people have kept Trippier already. Yeah, I'm looking at McAllister or Matoma, or both. A lot of people have Matoma. That's kind of a similar player anyway. A mid-5 Brighton midfielder. Obviously, Maddison would be a massive differential. I've got Salah. I haven't got Rashford, but there's plans for him to come in.
He's so
and up
cheap
front, a lot of
well.
people are going to have Tony anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only really the fringes. And obviously, this is looking at all 15 players. So I think you can get there for 29. Yeah, like you say, with a couple of hits and with the teams we currently got. I guess it then depends on the exit strategy out, 30 and beyond, whether you'll be happy carrying these players beyond that.
They're good players, though, aren't they? Like
they are.
It's one thing I'm looking at. I mean, Chelsea's maybe a little bit different, because Chelsea have been very poor this season, and they've been poor for quite a while as well. But the rest of them, I mean,
this is what I mean. Like 29, I don't think it's tricky to get a good team out. As in, it might not be the best or like the most optimal team, but I think you can get a good team. I mean, there's going to be huge swings in this week, because just 1 or 2 players could make all the difference.
And it's important to emphasize, as Rich was saying there as well, that there's a few things he'd swap here. That's cool. Like, this team, the whole point is it's full of alternatives. Could have had West Ham defence, could have had another Brighton midfielder instead of defender, could have had Brentford defence. I'm not saying this is the best team. I've tried to get as many good options in as possible. Mm-hmm. And then I think the interesting thing is to look at, as Rich was doing, and go, okay, well, I'm going to have double Man United. I could add another. I'm going to have Trippier. I'm going to have Kepa. Okay, I've got Ward and Sanchez here, but I've got James. Kepa, it's not as good a double as defensively as Ward and Sanchez, but it's good enough, so I'll have that. I could get Tony. I could get the Brighton. So if you, as Rich said, if you can get to most of this, if the big difference is then a Fernandez, a João Felix, a Maddison, an Ings, just looking at this team, maybe a James, but then you're benching someone, is that where you make, as we said a moment ago, the biggest gain on points on what you would have done if you hadn't played a chip versus not just yourself, but versus the field as well? The one final consideration for me here, and as we've gone through this chat, is genuinely really useful for me. I think I'm coming towards a strategy I'd like to work for myself, is then if you're not using a chip in this week in 29, you are setting yourself up with 27, probably for hits, but also for 29. So you've got a Brighton, you've got a Brentford. You're probably free hitting 28, even though we maybe weren't as much of a fan of that, because those are the players that you'll need for this that won't be playing then. That means you've then got the wild card and the bench boost for that 32, 34, 37 odd period. The one thing there, unless I've made a mistake, is that you will have a blank week that could hurt you because you won't have the free hit to deal with it. You'll probably have to set up to dead end into it and then wildcard out of it and then bench boost the double that comes later. Would that be correct?
Yeah. So
cool.
the plan that I was looking at, and I think some people are looking at, is you come out of 29. There's that blank game week in 32. Mm-hmm. So what you do is you dead end into 32. Obviously, you'd only have 3 transfers to do that, and then you wildcard in 33, which is a normal game week. And then you bench boost in 34. Potentially, you don't have to bench boost in 34.
So the one thing I would want to do with that strategy, which you've kind of answered there, is I would probably want to make sure I was wildcarding and bench boosting in consecutive weeks.
Yep.
Rather than say, if there's a world where you could wildcard in 31, bench boost in 34, as we mentioned earlier, that is a long enough period for your wildcard to get messed up by injuries and rotation and stuff. And so your bench boost is no longer an optimal bench boost. So I'd want to keep that tight and dead end and wildcard to make it happen.
It's very tight because 33 is a mid-game week. So it's Tuesday the 25th of April is 33 when you'll be wildcarding. And then Saturday, so 4 days later, is when you'll be bench boosting. I guess you could argue that's too tight a turnaround.
So I think for me, okay, yeah, we're still depending on this Liverpool thing because, 29 isn't what we're talking about. It's whether Liverpool will play more soon than, in fact, more soon. Good English, well done. But I think with my triple Liverpool, we'll see how Darwin is. With then my transfers would be focused on, let's say I take 1 -4, I get double Brighton and a Tony, something like that maybe. Then 4 ahead of 29, I maybe want to get a Chelsea, a João Felix, if I maybe have still got Darwin, or for Nonto, something like that. And I'm not far off this. So I think that's what works for me personally, maybe.
And just on blank 32, the dead end, because I think Michael Scott's just said it'll be a problem. That's where the thinking comes in. So Liverpool have definitely got a fixture in 32 at home to Forest. Mm-hmm. So that's where Liverpool players are useful. And then Everton are away to Palace. That's confirmed. Then Brentford, who will go heavily on for the doubles, have Aston Villa at home. So you've got all these players you're already going to have as starting to dead end into 32. Obviously, you're going to have to keep your Liverpool. And I know some people don't want to keep Liverpool players. So all the players we did hits for this week are useful for dead end into 32.
And looking back at that screen we did earlier, Arsenal will only blank if Southampton beat Grimsby. So they're nailed on to play.
Yeah, they've got it at 67%. Yeah, 67% likely.
Interesting looking at this team if you don't free hit, in terms of we're all saying how close we are. This doesn't have any Man City or Arsenal in it. And obviously, we've got triple Arsenal, and most of us have like double City now, don't we, still? What do you do with those players then? Because you can't bench 5 players that you've got in terms of you're obviously just going to have to play them. Are you going to be taking some of these Arsenal players out to bring in these double game week players? Because, you might have like an Odegaard there who's not got the upside of some players, especially if they've got double game weeks there. So are you looking to take an Odegaard out to bring in a Matoma or a McAllister?
So assuming what we just said a second ago, assuming Southampton do beat Grimsby, I believe Arsenal wouldn't double here. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't double, but whatever it is,
they wouldn't blank. They wouldn't blank.
Yeah, sorry. So then they would double later to make up for it. If they did blank, Arsenal have Leeds in 29. Looking at the fixtures here from Lego Mane earlier, so that's not the end of the world. If you ended up keeping some Arsenal players, it's not your doublers, but that's an all right fixture. Haaland, I mean, maybe you go Richard's route. Maybe you sell Haaland, then you really can beef up the rest of the team.
Nice. I tell you what, it's quite nice because we were a little bit worried tonight, weren't we? Thinking, are we going to have enough to talk about? Yes, we definitely had enough to talk about. Right. let's have a look at our bus teams moving forward. So this is my bus team. I will say straight away, captaincy isn't right. It's not going to be on Salah. I am extremely tempted to put it on Tony. Palhinha not there for Fulham. And I'm extremely tempted. It will probably end up on Saka, maybe. Haaland, Newcastle at home is obviously quite nice, but yeah. So it's a little bit up in the air at the moment, captaincy, but I am very tempted to go with Tony. I haven't gone different with my captaincy all year, and I'm really tempted. But anyway, I've got Kepa in goal, then I've got White, Akanji, and Tarkowski. Then I've got Odegaard, Saka, Salah, Rashford, and Darwin, Haaland, and Tony. I'm fully expecting a roller transfer this week unless there's some injury news. For instance, Darwin might still be out. If that's the case, then I'll move him to somebody that's going to play in blank game week 28 more than likely. But we will know whether I'm going to be free hitting in 28 at the end of this week anyway before I make a transfer. So if he isn't going to play and I free hit, then I won't. You know what I mean. So yeah, it's not looking too bad. I want to roll because I want to bring in 2 Brighton players for free next week, maybe 3 if I want to take a hit as well. But it's not. I feel it's okay. It's nothing special this week. I don't think. Yeah, it's not too bad. Rich,
I want to hear more
thoughts?
about Tony captain.
Why not? They haven't got Palhinha. Fulham have been kind of dropping off a bit recently, haven't they? They've looked really tired recently. Against Wolves, I mean, Wolves looked absolutely brilliant against Fulham in the first half. I was absolutely shocked. And Palhinha's been arguably one of their best players this season and kind of marshals that just in front of the defence, doesn't it? So Tony against Fulham, I think, could be quite a nice shout, personally. Don't get me wrong, it could massively hurt if I do it. But I've gone very, very template with my captaincy picks this year. And I feel like every now and again, when there's a nice fixture like this that pops up, it won't be awful. The other thing is, obviously, Saka's got Bournemouth at home, which is very,
And Haaland's
very nice.
got Newcastle.
Yeah, is that nicer fixture?
I think so. City at home are different.
Yeah.
As in when you've got City in a home fixture and Haaland in a home fixture as well.
Yeah.
I do find it tricky. I mean, I think it is a good week to, if you're going to choose a week to punt on the captaincy, just don't bottle it. Because I remember I almost captained Tony against Leeds, and then I changed it to Vice, and he scored a hat trick.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful hat trick.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Penalty, free kick.
Yeah, the free kick was lovely.
That was a something hat trick.
Oh, sorry, Seb. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that game.
The problem is, I mean,
remember.
obviously, like I'm going to be in the position where Haaland's going to hurt me anyway because he's going to be over 100% EO, and Saka probably going to be quite close as well with everybody owning Saka at the moment anyway. So yeah, it is what it is. I'll probably bottle it and not go there, but I quite fancy it if I'm honest.
You'll be talked into wildcarding by Thursday night. There'll be some strategy that comes out after the FA Cup.
No, I won't. I will not
see.
be wildcard. There is a possibility I'll wildcard in 27, but there is no chance that I wildcard this week. Yeah, so I if anything, like I said, I'll roll. Akanji's still there. He's like a cockroach, honestly. And obviously I've got Trippier on the bench, haven't I? But yeah, we'll see. Lovely. Rich, let's have a look at your team then. This is a team that needs a wild card. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I saw someone say that in the chat earlier. I quite like my team. Well, I've got Pickford in goal, Tarkowski, Dunk, Trent, Gabriel, Saka, Odegaard, Salah, Mahrez, Haaland captain, and Darwin. I've got McNeil first sub, then Shaw and Greenwood, who I can't wait to get rid of now after that. After the one time I needed him. I've got quite a few moves I can do here. I've got the exact money to do McNeil to Matoma. I can't quite get to McAllister. It's 0.1 more. I could do Mahrez to Rashford. I could do Darwin to... Who was I looking at for Darwin? Oh, Darwin to Tony. I probably will do a move. I may even look at doing a hit. It just completely depends on trip strategy.
Yeah. I mean, Darwin to Tony, if Darwin is out still, makes a hell of a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, he still worries me with this, because if he gets these 2 yellow cards, he's going to get 2-game ban. So he could end up not even having a double at all. If he misses the specific right fixtures and he blanks in 28. So I'd almost like to wait a week on Tony, but then I might be forced to do it because Darwin's obviously injured. I'm still not decided on Rashford either. I think if I free hit 28, it makes it more complex, as in maybe then I could I could go with him because I free hit, then he's back for the double.
Yeah.
If I decide to play it through, I might go without Rashford because it saves a transfer. He's not going to play in 28 anyway. It's the Southampton game that I'm worried about. But then there's so many good fixtures and it's such a bench headache that game week anyway in 27. Yeah. He could harm me, but I don't think he's essential.
Andy Martin's just put it in the chat, actually. I'm very surprised as well you're playing Tarkowski over Shaw.
To be honest, I haven't thought about it that much. Especially because Forest are good at home as well. But then I might do a transfer, so it could all change.
Yeah.
It all change. I don't know. I wouldn't really... If I play Darwin and Salah, I don't want to play Shaw. I don't know. I'll be playing Darwin, Salah and Trent. I don't want to play Shaw. I'd rather go all in.
Good. Can't wait for United to thrash him. Right, Seb, moving on to you, my friend.
Cool. My team is Kepa and goal, Trent, Gabriel, Shaw, Salah, Saka vice captain, Odegaard, Rashford, Andreas, Darwin if he's fit, and Haaland captain with a bench of Pickford, Trippier, Nonto, and Bueno. Those last two will definitely stay on my bench. I think Trippier will. Man City away is hard, even if Trippier is good. Pickford away against Nottingham Forest, I think is worse than Kepa, so that'll probably be the lineup. Captain is Haaland or Saka. There's no one else in that conversation for me, and I'm pretty sure it'll be Haaland. That I have a transfer. I could either roll or I could start bringing in some. I guess I would at least wait to see what happens at Liverpool, just so I know my strategy. And I have triple Liverpool or double if Darwin's still out. But I guess with that information, I would start moving towards Brighton or Brentford, or I would roll and do the same thing anyway. So for me, it's less interesting what I do this week and more where I want to end up. And where I want to end up is probably Tony. So maybe for Darwin, maybe for Nonto, depends where I get money elsewhere. I would like McAllister and I would like a Brighton defender. So that would be Andreas to say McAllister. And then I guess Bueno, Trippier, Shaw, depends on the strategy to a Brighton defender. Like I say, let's see what happens, what strategy I end up going with, and if Darwin's fit, because I think that dictates my moves.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Yeah, Darwin's a big one moving forward. Right, community team. How is it getting on, boys?
Sure. So let me just have a real quick check. Did great, Martinelli. So 47 points this week, which is 4 more than me, I think. Although took a -8. Had two. Yeah, of course we had 2 free transfers because I missed it last week. Sorry, there was sort of a good reason for once. It was family stuff, but I did miss the deadline last week, so I apologise. At the end of the season, there's 2 now. There's the Pope captain week we messed up, and there's the deadline I missed last week. So we'll when we finish the season, we'll add a few points on. We'll work out, say we'd captain Haaland in the Pope week because we would have done, and maybe we'll give ourselves, we'll see what we would have done last week. We'll try and work out a little addition to see if the team would have beaten us if I hadn't missed a couple of weeks. Although in fairness, I did miss a deadline once myself as well because I was doing the community team. So maybe it'll even out a little.
Didn't that pay off?
I did, yes, it did indeed. Yeah, so I wasn't going to mention that bit, Rich. I would have taken an extra transfer to bring in a City. No, I would have kept Haaland. It was a City defender. I would have brought in like Ake or Akanji or even Rico Lewis. It doesn't matter because none of them would have got me any points. So yeah, we have 47. We have Edison, Gabriel, Trent, Tarkowski, Saka vice captain, Martinelli, Matoma, obviously blanked as well. So that's where we probably would have had another player. Salah was captain, 6, still to come, of course, though. Greenwood with his big old 0. Haaland 10. Darwin also with a 0. And only Leno on the bench. So nothing to come in, unfortunately. We only put out 10 players this week. However, we are still, I believe, ahead of all of us. 143, 144k. Oof. We are 128th in the Community League. So if you add on a few points as well for the things I missed, probably about 100k, 110, 120. Yeah. Doing good. But I guess maybe we've got away with this week. This was the one that hurt, but some decisions to be made over the coming weeks over what our strategy is.
Yeah, nice. Let us know in the chat what you think we should do. Obviously, Seb and Rich will put the polls out and stuff for us.
It's all Seb.
We do need to actually have a think about how we want to do this one because usually, I think we've gotten into our rhythm now as long as we make deadlines with how we make transfers and stuff. Yeah. But this is going to come down to, it's not a poll on transfers, it's a poll on strategy. And then we need to stick to it in future weeks, right? Yeah. So in the chat, in the comments, if there's anything that looks obvious with this team, given what we've spoken about tonight, I think that's our first place to start. So we would appreciate your input.
I mean, the team's got 2 Brighton for starters, which probably leans it towards certain strategies.
You didn't say it, just certain strategies.
I don't know why I said it so mysteriously.
Yeah,
well, that would be
you
free
even
hit
put your
28.
finger on your chin. Certain strategies. Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. Like Seb said, obviously we need to decide, but we're not going to be putting any polls out, I'm assuming, until after Thursday when we know. Yeah. Right, question time. So, guys in the chat, thank you so much. I think we peaked at about 650 people in the chat at one point, which is fantastic. Make sure you like the stream, guys. It really does help us as well. The more you like it, the closer our arrows get to being green next week. So make sure you like the stream, please.
That's incentive to do the opposite, Andy.
Oh,
no,
yeah, that's true. Oh, God.
It's the same.
Yeah,
have
more
we
people
mentioned
like
how close both your ranks are now?
Yes.
Oh.
Cheers, Rich.
Sorry.
So, chuck your questions in, guys. We'll answer as many as possible in about 9 minutes. And obviously try and... yeah, it's always tough. We always say try and not make it too team dependent. But we'll see how we get on. David Hughes says, do I keep or sell Mahrez now, Seb?
Oh, goodness. First question, team dependent, isn't it? I think, assuming the mean average team-ish and strategy, Mahrez isn't problem right now. He's fine. I don't think I think the benching, Luke was saying, I don't think he predicted the benching, but it was one of those ones he had down as a possibility. I think he probably gets his place back. And then by the time it comes around to him, maybe Champions League and stuff again, you'd be going elsewhere with your strategy anyway. So yes, you keep him, I think.
And Rich?
See, I'm toying with getting rid. I think because I've got him, and I think just going into doubles and blanks, I don't feel comfortable with it anymore.
Yeah.
But he's one of those ones, like Seb says, he's not really a problem, but he also is. So yeah, I'm leaning towards getting rid of him. This is always the problem with Mahrez or Foden or any of them. It's hard to get off of them.
Yeah.
Had to keep him for Bournemouth and Forest, or Forest and Bournemouth. I'm leaning towards getting rid. It's just timing it right.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't have Rashford, so
yeah.
Yeah, for you, it feels like Mahrez becomes Rashford if required, right?
Yeah, I think it'd be quite easy, especially as Rashford's cheaper than Mahrez. So
yeah, we have much cheaper. Michael Scott says, why not wildcard the community team? Interesting comparison after week 34. So we could use that as like a guinea pig one, I'm guessing. That is completely up to the community.
Nick Pope and captain him.
Exactly. Ishan says, what to do with Edison, Seb?
I guess that question comes with the baggage of Edison being terrible since forever. There's a lot of discussion this week as well about Edison. Sorry to make this a longer answer, but I think it's interesting. I hope whether Edison is a good pick versus other goalkeepers or not. The argument is he never top scores. There's always some 4.5 in every season who does better. The argument there is yes, there is, but only after the fact. Can you predict it beforehand? And even if you can predict it's not going to be Edison, maybe you could bounce around some goalkeepers. That's generally what I've done in the past. So I think usually that's a good strategy. But over periods where City have doubles and really good fixtures and on paper a good defense with rotation uncertainty, so there isn't I don't know a company who's going to play every week or whatever it is, that's where Edison then comes into his own, because you get access to the best defense in the league, both in terms of, usually in terms of goals conceded and definitely in terms of underlying numbers, for a guaranteed 90 minutes for a cheaper price half the time than the defenders as well. So even though there's a better goalkeeper, there isn't a better combination. I say all of this because the argument then is, but he doesn't make saves and get bonus. You pick clean sheets above all else. That's the thing he hasn't done, right? It's not because he's usually limited to 6 points. It's because he hasn't even got those 6 points because they keep letting in the one chance that is conceded in a game. There's nothing you can do from that from a prediction point of view. It would be over adjustment to assume that Man City are going to concede a long shot every match from now on forever because, they're not. However, all that said, and sorry this is so long, but Edison, I guess the period where we thought he'd be brilliant has now passed. Unlucky, didn't go our way. I did Edison to Pickford because it worked for my team. Edison is fine, a bit like Mahrez, to hold for a bit. But and I'll pass over to Rich in a second because he's in a better situation for this, I think he starts becoming a problem soon because doubles and blanks don't line up well for an Edison team.
Yeah. Rich?
Yeah, well, I did Edison to Pickford as well. I think, what Seb said, spot on. Blanks in 28, blanks in 32. Even in that lovely double in 29, he's got Liverpool at home. Yeah, I think it's time to go. But, I mean, if you have to hold him this week, make a decision down the line, it's not a bad hold. I think Edison owners have been very, very unlucky.
Yeah. So Richard's answer is it's time to go. COYS, yeah. COYS says March, Matoma or McAllister. Rich.
I think McAllister. He's the one I want. I'm just 0.1 short. I'd also want Matoma. I don't care about March.
Yeah. We've only got a couple of days and we're in it, mate. Seb, what do you think?
McAllister, because Rich said so, and he's smart and good looking.
Oh, see, it's Matoma for me. I'm going to be gutted if I don't go with Matoma. So, yeah, but there you go. Let's have a look. Andy Martin, he's been putting this in the chat. He's put it in here about 4 times, so we'll answer it now. Yeah.
What's the biggest triple captain score on Twitter you've ever?
What do you think of the strategy of wildcard 27, free hit 28, dead end to 32, and then copy wildcard 33 teams with hits?
Genuinely, can you repeat that?
Yeah, please.
Wildcard 27.
Yep.
Free hit 28, dead end to 32, and then copy wildcard 33 teams with hits. And I'm assuming bench boost in one of those double game weeks later on.
Why don't you do the hits now instead?
Yeah, if you're wildcard... Again, maybe Andy, like, not criticizing, he's probably thought about this more than me, but you're wildcarding 27, free hitting 28, so you're wildcarding 429, and then did he say dead ending 32? So are you wildcarding for 3 weeks?
Yeah,
or
because,
because
then he's going to take loads of hits from his wildcard team in 30.
Right, so no. Take hits for 3 weeks, not 6 weeks. If the strategy is to copy wildcarders with hits, and then do your own wildcard at a different time, do the hits for a shorter period of time. There's definitely something I'm not getting here, but on the surface, that sounds like it's Andy, isn't it? So it's probably effective ownership. It's because most people are wildcard, so you do the opposite because, if you get points that no one else gets, they're worth more.
It'll be in your DMs later, mate. Rich, what do you think?
Yeah, I was a bit confused by it at first. I think I'd need to spend more time on that. It just sounded like to me you could do the hits now. And then keep your chips through the blank, because again you're doing that thing where you're was it wildcard 27?
Yeah.
So you're doing that thing where you're wildcard in, then you free hit, and then you come back after the international break without a wildcard going into the big double with 1 transfer. I don't know. I'm not keen on first.
Yeah.
First inspection of it.
For what it's worth, this sounds bad to me, but this is Andy Martin. For anyone who doesn't usually tune in, Andy Martin, who often posts things like this on Twitter, whether you get Fernandez when others don't, or Salah and stuff like that. And I usually find myself on the opposite side, and I'm very happy to say that usually I'm wrong. So in this scenario, despite me saying it sounds bad, the last time we had this conversation, which was like a Fernandez Salah version, Andy came out on top and quite comfortably. So maybe there's something there. I just need to look into it.
The wildcard in 27, you'd have a load of Brentford and Brighton.
Yeah.
That's what you'll be loading up on. So you could just do, because my plan is just to do a couple of hits to get some more Brentford and Brighton, and then free hit in 28, and then I guess 29. Like that's the same ongoing. But you've got one of your chips left. You're keeping your wild card.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's value in the wild card at whatever your hits would be.
Are we bench boosting 29 with this? Is the idea to bench boost 29?
No. I'm assuming bench boosting in 34 or 37.
So you're taking hits to bench boost. Okay.
Wild card in for Brighton and Brentford players.
I'm trying because I don't want to be like, I don't want to just go, nah, it's rubbish, because I think the whole point of this, right, is to think about things that don't immediately. No, but I mean, genuinely, firstly, I love Andy, but secondly, the whole point of this is to not just reject things that either aren't what we're going to do ourselves or what immediately makes sense to us, because that's where we find, even if we don't find a better option, it's where we reinforce that our option is actually a good one, rather than just confirmation biasing ourselves into it. So I'm trying to make this work. I wonder if the strategy works, but not played in this order. So it's the wildcard 27 that I don't see why that brings you a greater benefit than elsewhere.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got 1 Brentford or 1 Brighton player. I mean, maybe if you've got none, it might make more sense, but...
Someone just said Andy might have played his bench boost already. If that's the case, does that work? Because he doesn't... So he no longer has a bench boost to set up for. So now it's a case of, can he maximize a week where others will be getting lots of points? And then, I guess, if he gets ahead... I know FPL doesn't quite work like this, but it's the idea of, if you get ahead by 20 points, can I then only take 16 points worth of hits to maintain that 20-point lead? Therefore, I'm up 4 points, I guess.
I think it's going to be hard to copy the template when everyone's on so many different strategies, though. Although I
Yeah.
guess by that point in 32 onwards, most chips will be gone.
You know what, though? Not only does Andy now have the greatest and most honourable triple captain score ever in Twitter history, he also has the longest answer to a quick fire question round ever.
I don't know what happened to quickfire. My God. Right, very, very quickly. FPL Golo Galazzo says the best Chelsea defender to get instead of James. No one.
Chilwell.
Wow.
He started a couple in a row. Honestly, I almost put him in that free hit 28 team that everyone hated.
When I started my free hit 29 team, the base I used a model to sort of see what it would say, and then I changed things I didn't like, and moved things around that I think made more sense, especially this far away with minutes being uncertain. I started one for 28 as well, and then Rich very kindly took over, and that had Chilwell and James in.
I wouldn't be touching any Chelsea defenders. Genuinely wouldn't. Like James, I get. James, I get. Yeah, Kepa's different because he's obviously the keeper.
Because he's lucky. Yeah.
Yeah. No, because he's the keeper. He's going to play. Potter made 6 changes again this week. He doesn't have a clue. Badiashile was everybody's, oh yeah, he's playing every game, and then he gets benched. Like, they are all over the place.
Thiago's injured, yeah.
They are all over the place. Yeah, Thiago's injured, I guess, now, yeah. But honestly, I wouldn't be going anywhere near them at the moment, personally. And actually, I think God knows whether Potter's going to stay in a job, but if he does, he's just changing everybody around all over the place, isn't he? Because he's like, I'm trying to find out my best team, because he's got about 50 players to pick from. So I don't see that changing anytime soon either. I would be absolutely shocked if he has a settled team at any point now until the end of the season. And he's just got so many players to pick from. So yeah, and when Chilwell and Reece James are properly back all the time. I mean, James has already come out and said, I'm going to be managed this season. I cannot be playing every minute of every game, because I need to make sure that I'm fit when I'm needed. And for me, that ruins him as an option, at least this season. So yeah, I wouldn't be going near any of them personally.
What's your plan for, this is a slight tangent, with Kepa? Because I'm intrigued as a non-Kepa owner.
Yeah.
After a couple of blanks. I mean, I'm just wondering.
He's just going to stay there, I think. The problem is, who else am I going to move to in terms of Kepa has got a really nice run. If anything, I'm going to change Ward. And bring in somebody that rotates nicely with Kepa, if that makes sense. Kepa can do it. And also the thing is, when he does keep a clean sheet, they don't usually score a lot of goals, so he's usually in the bonus. So
it's not normally a 6-pointer.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think if you wildcarded this week, the best options are probably Pope, Raya, or
Raya would be in there.
Something like that, I think,
for
carrying us over this period. But Kepa's in that group, isn't he? So if you've got him, I think you're chill. Yeah. I've got Pickford, who's probably maybe just below that group. Yeah. So without planning it too carefully, I'm relatively happy with that combination. I think Kepa's you're not selling Kepa anytime too soon, are you?
Yeah. No. No. I mean, it's not a priority for me. Not when I've got players like a Kanju and Patterson in my team. Anyway, right, we'll finish there. People in the chat, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you for your questions as well. I genuinely thought we'd get through about 10, 12 questions. We got through about 4 because we were looking in such detail at some of them. But it was good to have the discussions anyway. I hope you enjoyed yourself tonight. Again, thank you so much for liking the stream. Make sure you do like it for us. It really does help us. Seb, thank you for joining us tonight. Hope you enjoyed yourself.
Thank you, mate. I did. And just to reiterate, FA Cup is important this week. Pay attention to that, and then take the information hopefully we provided tonight, combine it with the information everyone else will give you the rest of the week, and go from there. We, as it stands, don't know what the best route is because it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, exactly. And Rich, hope you enjoyed yourself as well.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's got me thinking, actually. Don't know if that's a good thing or not, but it's got me thinking.
Yeah. Lovely stuff. So thank you all, guys. Obviously, we know this is only going to be relevant for about 2-3 days, and then everything will change again. But we've tried to help you as much as possible, even when we know everything, if that makes sense. So I hope we've kind of achieved that for you as well. We'll see you again next week. Have a lovely weekend, and may your arrows be green. Bye-bye.